Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, Mom Nani. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Ahmad Faqih Khoironi, and I'm the student of RPL Batch 5 at Universitas Islam Sultan Agung. And in this good occasion, I would like to present an article titled Indonesian Undergraduate EFL Students' Perception of the Use of Debate as Learning English Speaking Method. So let's jump to the first part, which is the background of the study. So when it comes to teaching speaking in university, there are already a lot of methods out of there, like role play, storytelling, and monologue. And these methods are pretty common and widely used at university. But at Universitas Negeri Malang, specifically in a course called Speaking for Academic Purpose, they also use debate as one of their teaching methods. And what makes a debate stand out is that it trains two things at once, which are speaking ability and critical thinking. So naturally, the researchers got curious and wanted to dig deeper about this. Next, we jump to the research problem. So some previous studies have proven that debate is effective, but there was still something missing, which is nobody had really asked the students directly about what they personally think and feel about this method. So this is the gap in the study that the researcher wanted to fill. So the researchers came up with three questions. First, what benefits did students get from debate? Second, what challenges did they face? And the third, how was debate actually implemented in the classroom? And then next, we jump to the researchers' purpose. So based on this problem, the researchers want to explore how English department students at Universitas Negeri Malang perceive the use of debate in their speaking class, covering both the good and the not so good parts of their experience. But before getting the research itself, let's quickly cover what previous studies have found. So there are three things literature covers. First, teaching speaking methods such as role play, storytelling, and monologue have all been proven to improve speaking, build confidence, and reduce anxiety. And then debate specifically has been shown to improve that it improves speaking performance, sharper critical thinking, and increase students' perception. And then the third, researchers have identified three categories of speaking problems, which are affective problems like anxiety and low confidence, social problems like the learning environment and limited language exposure, and linguistic problems like vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. So these three categories will be connected directly to the findings later. So now we will jump to the method, which is the researcher used a mixed method, which basically means they combined quantitative and qualitative to get a much fuller picture of the situation. They had 26 students from the English department at Universitas Negeri Malang as their participant, and these were the students who had already taken the speaking for academic purpose course. So they had a real first-hand experience with the debate method. And for collecting the data, the researcher used two tools. The first one was an online questionnaire using a Likert scale, where students rated their agreement from 1 until 4 and their meaning from strongly disagree until strongly agree. And then the second tool was a semi-structured interview with the two selected students, one from English language education and one from English language literature. And then for the analysis, the questionnaire data was processed using Microsoft Excel to look at the frequencies and percentages. Meanwhile, the interview data was analyzed using Mouse et al.'s interactive model, which involves three steps. The first, condensing the data, the second, displaying it, and then the third, drawing conclusion from it. So overall, it is pretty solid and well-structured approach. Okay, now we're going to the finding section. So starting with the benefits, the results show that the majority of students felt really positive about using debate in their speaking class, and 100% of students, meaning all of them, agreed that debate helped enrich their vocabulary. Then around 96% felt it improved their speaking skills and developed their critical thinking at the same time. And around 88% students felt more confident uh, speaking English after the experience. On top of that, students also mentioned some extra benefits like learning debate jargon and how to control their emotion while arguing something, which are the things you don't usually get from other teaching methods. And the only area that scored notably lower was anxiety, where only 69% felt debate actually helped reduce it, and that's something worth paying attention to. And now we move to the challenges part, which is around 81% of students felt there weren't enough class meetings to practice debate properly, and 77% said that the time given for each session was simply too short, and about 50% or a half of them also felt that they didn't have enough preparation time before going into the debate. And some students, especially those who had never debated before, really struggle to understand how the debate system works because the explanation from the lecturer wasn't always detailed enough. And then now we jump to the last finding, which is the implementation. And in this is really interesting because it turned out the way debate was taught was quite different depending on which lecturer was handling the class. So the debate system was depending on the lecturer. And for example, one class was not s- for sorry, not for example, but one class watched a YouTube video as a concrete example of how debate works, while another class ran a trial session so students could practice first before the real thing. Even the format was different between class, there was no really single standard system across the board, so it all came down to the who was teaching at the class. And now let's connect all of this finding to the bigger picture, which is discussion. So the benefits that students experience, like better speaking, sharper critical thinking, and richer vocabulary. Um, this is what previous research has already found. Some studies by some researchers came to a similar conclusion. So in that sense, the study confirms what we already know, that debate is really working. But here's where it gets more interesting. Even though most students felt um, some improvement, many of them said that it wasn't as significant as they had hoped. And when we ask why, the answer actually connects back to those three speaking problem categories that were mentioned earlier in the literature review. So the limited meetings and short preparation time are social problems that directly reduce how much language exposure students get. And then the anxiety that didn't really go away is an effective problem, especially for beginners who came with no prior debate experience and didn't get enough guidance. And the innocent implementation across classes mean students end up with very different levels of understanding and preparation. So the big takeaway from this study is that debate has a great potential, but how it is implemented really makes all the difference. So it depends on how it is implemented. Next, we jump to the conclusion, which is the last part of this presentation. The study basically shows us that students do feel positive about using debate in their speaking class, and they found it helpful for their critical thinking, vocabulary, fluency, and confidence. So debate does work, and actually that's a really good thing. But at the same time, the improvement wasn't as big as it could have been. Uh, and the main reason are pretty simple: not enough meetings, not enough time, and no consistent system across different classes. So the messages from this study is clear. Debate is a great method, but it needs to be planned and implemented properly to actually make real a difference for the result, or make a good and best result for the students. And that's all my presentation, and I hope it was helpful and it's clearly can be understood. So thank you so much for watching. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.